medical bay hummed with soft blue light when Alex Crawford opened his eyes and immediately wondered if he had died after all, because nothing around him looked remotely human, and his chest did not hurt the way it should after a direct plasma hit to his fighter's cockpit shield. A figure moved in his peripheral vision, and he turned his head slowly to see her standing there with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal that caught the blue light and scattered it into tiny rainbows across the metallic walls, and she was tall, maybe 7 feet, with features that were almost human but not quite. Too symmetrical, too perfect. Like someone had designed a face using only mathematics and forgotten to add the imperfections that made people real. "Welcome back to consciousness, Alex Crawford," she said in perfect English but with no emotion in her voice at all. "I am Vera of the Calith Medical Corps, and you have been under our care for 3 planetary rotations since we recovered your escape pod from the debris field of what your people call the Battle of the Outer Rings." Alex tried to sit up, but his body would not cooperate, and Vera moved closer with a device in her hand that she passed over his chest, and suddenly he could move again, though everything felt strange and disconnected, like his body was not entirely his own anymore. "My squadron," he said, and his voice came out rough and broken. "Did anyone else make it out?" "You were the only survivor recovered from that sector," Vera said with the same flat, emotionless tone. "The Calith rescue ships arrived approximately 4 hours after your vessel was disabled, and by then all other human life signs had ceased." The words hit him harder than the plasma blast had, and Alex felt something break inside his chest that had nothing to do with physical injury, and everything to do with the memory of voices in his comm system, his friends, his brothers and sisters, in arms, going silent one by one until there was only static and his own breathing and the sound of his damaged ship tearing itself apart around him. That night the nightmares came with a vengeance, and Alex found himself back in the cockpit, watching Lisa's fighter explode in a ball of fire, and hearing Danny scream over the comm as his shields failed, and feeling the impact that sent his own ship spinning into the void, and knowing, absolutely knowing, that he should have done something different, made different choices, been faster or smarter or braver, and maybe then they would all still be alive. He woke up gasping and realized someone was in the room with him, and Vera stood beside his bed with her crystalline hand hovering uncertainly over his shoulder, like she wanted to touch him, but did not know how, and her face, usually so blank and expressionless, showed something that might have been confusion or concern or both. "You cried in your sleep," she said quietly. "Your body produced salt water from your optical organs, and you made sounds of distress, and I do not understand why, because you are safe here and no harm is coming to you in this moment." Alex wiped his face with the back of his hand and tried to explain about grief and survivor's guilt, and how humans carried their dead with them, even after the bodies were gone. But the words came out jumbled and insufficient, and Vera listened with her head tilted, slightly to one side, like she was trying to solve an equation that refused to balance. "This emotional response serves no logical purpose," she said finally. "Your distress cannot change past events or resurrect your deceased companions. So why does your species choose to experience such suffering?" "We don't choose it," Alex said, and laughed bitterly. "It just happens because we loved them, and love doesn't come with an off switch, no matter how much easier that would make things." Something flickered across Vera's face too fast for Alex to identify, and she stood there for a long moment before she did something completely unexpected and pulled a chair over to his bedside and sat down with her hands folded in her lap and said, "Then I will stay here while you sleep, so that when the nightmares return you will wake to a presence that reminds you that you are not alone in your survival." Alex stared at her in complete bewilderment, because nothing in his briefings about the Calith had suggested they were capable of this kind of spontaneous compassion, and Vera met his gaze with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light and did not look away. The next morning Alex woke to find her still there, and over the following days a pattern emerged, where Vera would appear in the evening and sit quietly, while Alex talked about Earth and his family and the friends he had lost, and gradually, without either of them quite noticing when it started, Vera began to talk too. She told him about the Calith homeworld, where cities of crystal rose from seas of liquid mercury, and where her people had long ago decided that emotions were inefficient biological responses that hindered optimal decision-making, and had spent 10,000 years breeding them out through genetic manipulation and social conditioning, until what remained was a civilization of perfect logic and zero warmth. "We are the most technologically advanced species in this galactic sector," Vera said with something that sounded almost like sadness, though Alex could not be sure. We have eliminated war and poverty and disease and inequality, and we have achieved everything that your philosophers dream about. And yet when I observe you humans with your messy emotions and your illogical attachments, and your tendency to cry over things that cannot be changed, I find myself experiencing sensations that my medical training does not adequately explain. What kind of sensations? Alex asked and reached out without thinking to touch her crystalline hand, and was surprised to find it warm and solid and unexpectedly familiar. Vera looked down at their joined hands, and for the first time since he had met her, her expression became something Alex could read clearly, and it was wonder mixed with fear and confusion and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something neither of them knew how to name. When I heard you crying in your sleep, I felt a disturbance in my chest area that was not a medical emergency, but still caused me significant discomfort, she said slowly, like she was discovering the words as she spoke them. And when you told me about your friends who died, I experienced an increase in core temperature and a desire to reduce your suffering, even though doing so served no logical purpose for my mission parameters. And now, when I am away from this medical bay, I find myself thinking about your well-being with a frequency that interferes with my other duties. Alex felt his throat tighten because he recognized what she was describing even if she did not, and he squeezed her hand gently and said, Vera, I think you might be learning how to feel things again. And I know that probably scares you, but I want you to know that it's okay because feeling things is what makes life worth living even when it hurts. The weeks passed and Alex healed and Vera spent more time with him than protocol required, and they talked about everything from quantum physics to childhood memories, and Alex taught her how to laugh, which started as just a strange sound she made when trying to imitate his reaction to a joke, but gradually became something genuine and unforced and absolutely beautiful. The day came when Alex was cleared for discharge and Vera stood in the doorway of his room with her usual composed expression, but her hands were clasped tightly together, and her crystalline skin seemed dimmer than usual. And Alex felt his own chest tighten, because he had known this moment was coming but had not prepared himself for how much it would hurt. I have submitted a request to my superiors, Vera said without preamble. I wish to transfer from my current position to become a human liaison officer assigned to your diplomatic corps, and I have justified this request by explaining that direct observation of human behavior would benefit Calith's understanding of your species. Alex felt hope flare in his chest and asked, And what's the real reason? Vera met his eyes, and for once her expression was completely open and honest and vulnerable, and she said, Because when I imagine you leaving and never returning, I experience a sensation of profound loss that my medical knowledge identifies as emotional pain, and I have decided that I would rather feel this pain than return to the emotionless existence I had before I met you. Before Alex could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station, and Vera's expression shifted instantly to alert focus, and she accessed a wall panel with practiced efficiency, and her face went even more pale than usual, and she said, There is an attack fleet approaching this sector, and all human personnel are being recalled to active duty immediately. The next hours were chaos, and Alex found himself back in a fighter cockpit with new squad mates he barely knew, and the old terror came rushing back along with the memories of flames and screaming, and watching people die while he lived, and he almost froze at the launch point until he heard Vera's voice come through his comm system clear and steady and completely unauthorized. Alex Crawford, she said, and her voice held an intensity he had never heard before. You are experiencing fear, and that is logical because danger is real, but you must also remember that fear is your body's way of preparing you to survive and survive. You must, because I have recently discovered that I cannot adequately imagine a universe that does not contain you. Her words cut through his panic like a blade, and Alex felt something settle in his chest, and he launched into the void and flew like he had never flown before, because someone was waiting for him on the other side, and that made all the difference. The battle was brutal, but Alex kept hearing Vera's voice in his head, and